Hi, Randy.
Hello, Melanie. How are you today?
Full of the joys of summer.
Excellent. Is it sunny in Lampeter again?
Oh, the sun always shines in Lampeter.
Does it ever rain?
Yeah, but even when it rains, the sun shines because it's such a beautiful place.
So, do you have much of a harvest at harvest time?
Plenty of harvest, sunshine and showers. Happy
Oh, right.
days, happy
Wonderful.
farmers.
Because, of course, that's what it's a part of today's gospel reading, isn't it? That the harvest is plentiful. So, I just wanted to check that the harvest was plentiful in Lampeter.
Oh, well, it depends what you mean by harvest, of course, doesn't it?
Well, the leaves on the trees.
The harvest from our fields is plentiful. The
Good.
harvest of souls, not as plentiful as I'd like.
But have you got any workers?
Not enough.
Not enough. Because that was a problem that Jesus identifies, doesn't he? That the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few.
And he tells us what to do about it as well, doesn't he?
He does tell us indeed. He does. He does
Ask the
indeed.
Lord of the harvest to send out labourers into his
Exactly.
harvest. And it struck me that we don't do so much of that. We've been praying very faithfully in our prayer meeting for our church. We have a weekly prayer meeting to pray for the
Good.
growth of the church.
Good.
And, the Lord has been answering that prayer slowly. There's been no great
Yeah.
revival yet. But ones and twos, and a growth in depth of interest in the faith,
Yeah.
growth in discipleship. This are all sorts of happening. But we haven't been praying, apart from a schools worker, which was a long-standing project, we haven't been praying for workers for the harvest. And maybe we should start praying for it, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Interestingly, just to repeat what you just said, it's one of the first things I tell my missionary leaders. They should start a prayer for growth meeting, specifically for church growth. And those that have, I can certainly off the top of my head think of two of them at least, have seen the growth. Takes time, it's not particularly dramatic, but the growth does come when we ask the Lord of the harvest.
Mm. JC Rail's got something very good to say about prayer if you want to hear it. Do you want to hear a
I
JC Rail?
I thought he might have somehow. Go on then, let's hear JC Ryle.
Well, he says, prayer is one of the best and most powerful means of helping forward the cause of Christ in the world. It is a means within the reach of all who have the spirit of adoption. Not all believers have money to give to missions. Very few have great intellectual gifts or extensive influence among men. But all believers can pray for the success of the gospel, and they ought to pray for it daily. Many and marvellous are the answers to prayer which are recorded for our learning in the Bible. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Prayer is one of the principal weapons which the minister of the gospel ought to use. To be a
Mhm.
true successor of the apostles, he must give himself to prayer as well as to the ministry of the word. This, above all, is the way to procure helpers to carry on Christ's work. Colleges may educate men, bishops may ordain them, patrons may give them livings, but God alone can raise up and send forth labourers who will do work among souls. For a constant supply of such labourers, let us daily pray.
He's dead right, isn't he? Dead right.
Yeah, you
And
know,
as you said, we don't pray for additional labourers. We think the church in Wales from the Church Growth Fund will cough up the money for them, and that will sort the problem. But we should
yeah,
be praying for additional labourers.
we should be. So it is a real. I find that a real challenge to myself actually for my prayer
Yeah,
life because and JC Ryle says pray daily. Well, it's
yeah,
certainly not in my daily prayers.
yeah, yeah. Your prayer for growth meeting tends to be once a week at the most.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but my
yeah,
personal prayer life, just me and God in my study or in my bed or wherever it is I'm doing it. I'm not praying for workers, so maybe that's a challenge to all of us to pray for more labourers.
So when you pray in your bed, do you fall asleep?
Well, yeah, eventually.
Right, oh,
That's
okay,
okay. It's quite a
okay.
nice way to go to sleep, I think,
Indeed.
connected to the Lord in prayer.
Indeed, indeed.
It's how I hope to go to the big sleep
Go to
in the end.
glory.
Yeah,
You want
you
to,
know,
you're,
is to go to sleep, die, praying to the Lord, and wake up seeing His face. Isn't that the wonderful promise for a Christian?
it'd be glorious, glorious. Pain free.
I trust the Lord to take care of it, isn't it?
Right, right. So yeah, so there we are. That's today. Today's gospel reading. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few, and we need to be praying for additional workers. Why do we need additional workers? Does he say, verse 3? Because you're going to be going out there like lambs, aren't you, among the
I find it,
wolves?
I find it quite interesting. He's talking about sending out labourers into the harvest field, but he sent out 70.
Yeah. So he's got some gospel growth. It starts with 12 and then it goes up to 72.
Yeah, or 70, depending on which. I've got a little footnote in my Bible as to whether it's 70 or 72.
Hmm.
I mean, it
And
hardly matters much, does it?
well, I was reading somewhere the commentators really debate that, don't they? Should it be 70 or 72? And whether it relates to something in the Old Testament or something. There is something symbolic in the number 72. But then they also say not to get hung up about it. It's still a lot.
I think that's the main point, isn't it, really? Is he's sending out a lot to go and do
Yeah,
his work.
yeah,
And they
yeah.
haven't done 3 years training, have they? They haven't been down to
No,
St. Paddens. They
no,
haven't got their
no,
certificate.
no, indeed they haven't. And there's an urgency about it, isn't there? That really
Mm,
comes across in this passage. Go, command. And that's the other thing about it as well, isn't it? It's go. It's a command. It's not a debate. As you said, not if you've got the certificate, not if you've had the training, not if the weather's okay or the wind's blowing in the right direction. Go. Get on
mm.
with it.
And greet no one on the road.
Yeah.
And that's quite
Yeah.
interesting because,
Yeah.
I love to walk around Lampeter because it's a small enough town to be able to walk around it, not get
Uh-huh.
in the car. Parking's expensive and rubbish anyway, but have a nice walk around. But of course, you stand the risk of having conversations. And I tend to think that's a positive thing.
Hmm.
You meet somebody on the road, you have a conversation with them, find out how they are. It saves doing pastoral visiting when you go and nobody's in. It's great. But here, Jesus says, don't greet anybody on the road. You're not there even to find out how they're doing after their operation or, how their grandchildren are. You've got a purpose.
Yeah.
Don't be waylaid.
Yeah. Don't be sidetracked. Don't be held up. Get on with the job. That's how important this job is. Don't be sidetracked by having a gossip with Mrs. Jones. Just get on with the job. And also
And
the
trust in
then
him.
yeah, and you notice he immediately warns, doesn't he? It's not going to be easy. I am sending you out like lambs among wolves. There are people all around you waiting to devour you. They're going to take the mick out of you. They're going to do you down. There's going to be opposition. And right at the beginning, Jesus says so. We shouldn't surprise us when we go through a hard time with it. When we do face opposition, because Jesus tells us here right at the beginning, you're going to have problems. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. You're going to
Mm.
need more helpers.
And he says that a lot, doesn't he? That it's going to be difficult. Yet we still complain, well, I do, when it's difficult, when there are problems, or people are saying things about you behind your back, or telling others
Yeah,
not to talk to you, or all of this kind of stuff that goes
yeah,
on. I feel deeply aggrieved by it. But actually, Jesus said, this sort of thing's going to happen to you.
yeah,
This is part and parcel.
yeah, yeah. Live with it. Just get on with the job.
Yeah,
Don't
and you are
whinge.
vulnerable because a lamb amongst wolves is incredibly vulnerable. We periodically have stories around here, when a dog that's not on a lead has got into a field and it's worried the sheep or, and it might have killed a lamb or a ewe. And it's terrible and there's an outcry and quite rightly so. But if a domestic pet can cause that much trouble to a lamb or a ewe, then a whole pack of wolves. Jesus is saying you are vulnerable,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you've got to
yeah, yeah.
trust in me. Take no purse, no bag, no sandals.
Yeah,
Why? Because he's going to provide, isn't he?
yeah, yeah. And don't stop for a gossip.
Yeah,
Focus on
don't
the
stop.
task in hand.
And then
Yeah,
you go to a house, and again you're
yeah,
trusting in God. You're not trying to find the best place to stay or the
yeah,
nicest family.
yeah. It's not for your comfort that you do it. It's not for your benefit. You get what you're
Mm.
given and accept it and be grateful for it. You don't just go from one house to the other, deciding who makes the nicest casserole, that you're happy to have every night. That's not what you're there for. Sorry.
But it's true because it's all part of that. Don't be distracted, isn't it? Don't be
Yeah,
distracted by the worldly stuff.
yeah.
Get on and do the stuff I'm telling you to do.
And you're not in it for your own comfort. That's not the aim of it. You're there to fulfill the job that Jesus has asked us to do.
JC Rowe's got something else to say about that. Do you want to hear it?
Yep,
He's
he's
talking
on
about
form
ministers.
today, isn't he, JC Ryle?
Oh, he had a couple of quotes on this.
Right, okay.
Right. He says, instructions like these, no doubt, have a primary and special reference to the ministers of the gospel. They are the men, above all, who, in their style of living, ought to be careful to avoid the spirit of the world. Simplicity in food and household arrangements, and readiness to put up with any accommodation, so long as health can be preserved uninjured, should always be the mark of the man of God. Once let a preacher get the reputation of being fond of eating and drinking and worldly comforts, and his ministerial usefulness is at an end. The sermon about things unseen will produce little effect when the life preaches the importance of the things that are seen. Now, isn't that a word into our church life at the moment here in
It,
Wales?
it is, isn't it? Yes,
You know,
yes,
the damage done to your witness if you're known for drinking and
yeah,
eating and the things of the flesh. Yeah.
yeah, yes,
I'm not saying,
indeed.
we don't want to have our vicarages comfortable. We do. And I'm glad vicarages are a better state than 30 years ago and longer ago. But actually, that shouldn't be our primary thing.
No, no, no. But too often it is. Take it from me, who's met a number of candidates for post, and the first thing they want to know about is the vicarage and the state of the vicarage. And I don't like that house. Can we have that house and whatever?
And I've
Yeah,
got a clergy colleague who's older than me, um, who made it a point of never looking at the vicarage before
yeah,
he went to a parish.
yeah. It doesn't really matter, does it? Roof over your head, some central heating, doors that lock, and Bob's your uncle. No, I better not say. I was going to come up with another example, but no, I better not.
Better not. But we
No,
all know about it. And actually, we've got to take that challenge ourselves again, haven't we? About where our focus is when it comes to ministry.
yeah,
But look at what they're told to do. I find their role is quite interesting. So we've been told how they're to go,
yeah,
um, and to trust in God as they're going, and not to be interested in the material things. But look at their job:
yeah,
cure the
yeah,
sick.
and proclaim the gospel, proclaim the good
Mm.
news. Yeah, yeah. And if
That
you get,
healing ministry is quite important there, isn't it? The healing ministry in this particular time. Do you think there's a difference here with the healing ministry to today?
well, I was actually going to go down a different path there. We were having a debate in in our house group on Tuesday night about the idea of peace, and you bring peace and what peace is. And we were discussing, the peace of the world is, being trouble free and not having worry. Whereas Christian peace or God's peace is about peace with Him, knowing forgiveness of sins, knowing the assurance that you're going to heaven when you die. And that is God's peace. And that's the peace that actually we're talking about, not a trouble-free life. And I've forgotten where I was going with that, but hey ho, never
I
mind.
think you're talking about the sort of leaving the peace in the house or shaking the dust off which I think is a different passage actually. Though
No, I
it's
don't think I was going there. I was thinking about
well,
healing the sick, or and it's what do we define as healing? What do we define as the sick? Is it physical? Is it spiritual? Um, or whatever?
well, of
And
course,
what are we bringing?
in the first century, it was very much physical, wasn't it? Because you saw Jesus physically healing people. And then, you see the other accounts of the disciples going out
Hmm.
physically healing people. Um, Whereas people do get healed when you pray for them today, but not
They do.
everybody gets healed.
Yeah, yeah.
It seems to be a different emphasis on what we're called to do today.
You see, the other issue I have, maybe this is because I've got a son who's training to be a doctor, is that I think we're too quick to disregard the medical profession. Um, so if you like, the healing my son brings to somebody in his professional job, I hope, um, we give thanks to God for as well. Why can't he, as a doctor, still be a gift from God to heal the sick? That can be
I suppose
his
it's a
specific
different
ministry.
means. It's a different means of healing, though, isn't it? Because when you
Yeah,
lay your
but
hands on somebody and they're healed, or there's the means which is through medicine, which is also more. And of course, in earlier centuries of the church, they took that command to cure the sick very seriously because your
yeah,
first hospitals sprang out of monasteries and places, didn't they?
yeah,
Because they saw this ministry of curing the sick.
and you hear stories, don't you, about monks and their healing medicines, if you like, that they were able to offer people in those early years.
Mm. But nevertheless, praying for people who are sick is still a powerful thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it's one of the
yeah,
things which is often described as being as a way into the Muslim community.
yeah.
If you've got friends who are Muslim and somebody's ill, their grandma's ill or whatever it is, would you like me to pray for them? Because they don't feel they've got that same access to Allah that we've got
Hmm.
to God. So they're
Yeah.
often quite happy for us to pray. And often God does do a miracle in those circumstances, doesn't he?
And do you know, you've nicely linked into today's psalm.
Oh, have I? I haven't even looked
Yeah,
at it.
you've nicely because of the context of today's psalm, or the psalm that goes with it. It's a psalm that David wrote when he'd been delivered from sickness, and how that prompts him to turn his praise to God. Um, that God had delivered him from sickness. He'd lifted him out of the depths, the psalm says in verse 1. God reaches down and lifts him up. But there we go. That was a little sidetrack for you.
I also think it's interesting here that Jesus doesn't tell them to stick around if they're not welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go where you can be most use.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
where the
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunities are.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I
And
wonder where that relates to some of our ministry today. We've got difficult communities, small church congregations. How much time should be spent on trying to revive those and make people seek the gospel?
again, one of the things I tell my missionary leaders is you put your energy, your emphasis where you can see God at work. And so that actually you do that. What's the point sometimes of wasting what little time you've got where there is no response? Go where God is at work, look for where God's at work, and then work with God where he's at work. So yeah, shake your dust, shake the dust from your feet, and go somewhere else. And I also find it interesting, just reading verse 11 onwards, that it's God who will bring the judgment. Just go. Don't condemn them. Leave that to God. God will do it. And the consequences are going to be severe, um, for those who condemn you, and oppose you.
Don't you think it's interesting though? The lectionary misses that bit out. So
Can
verses
I
12
can
to
I
15.
can I read a J.C. Ryle quote, because that's on verses 13 to 15, the quote I found.
Go on
Can
then.
I have
Give
a
us a bit
turn,
more rail. Can you have too much
please?
rail? I don't think so.
Please, Melanie, please. I've got to find it though. My turn to read JC Ryle. Hang on, I've got to find it now. Hang on. Uh,
But while
let
you're
me find
finding
it.
it,
I
shall I say
found
what
it.
I think about the fact that they've missed this bit out, or is that what JC Rail's talking about?
No, 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 no.
No, because
Go on.
why do you think this is missed out? I think it's because they wanted to put over this image of Jesus as being mild and kind and lovely and not really talking about judgment very much because we don't really like that. But actually, he is so clear. It will be more tolerable for Sodom than for that town who rejects Jesus.
You said that really Welsh then. It'd be more tolerable for Sodom.
I've been living in
Anyway,
Wales a long while. Let's have your JC
yeah,
Ryle.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's going to be more tolerable for them than for you, or for those who oppose you. That's quite damning, isn't it? Yeah, that's anyway.
Yeah,
Okay, do you want to hear JC Ryle?
go on, I'm waiting.
These declarations teach us that all will be judged according to their spiritual light, and that from those who have enjoyed most religious privileges, most will be required. They teach us the exceeding hardness and unbelief of the human heart. It was possible to hear Christ preach and to see Christ's miracles and yet remain unconverted. There you go.
That's the thing about Capernaum that struck me when I visited it, because of course Capernaum that he mentions in verse 15 was where Jesus was based. So everybody in Capernaum would have known Jesus as the bloke who lived down the road, wouldn't they? Because that was where
Hmm.
he was based. Um, Yet, as Capernaum is singled out. You, Capernaum, will you be exalted to heaven? No, you will be brought down to Hades. So people of Capernaum didn't listen to the message that Jesus was proclaiming. And Capernaum has been destroyed and never rebuilt. That's why when
Mm.
you visit Capernaum, you can actually walk down the streets Jesus walked down. You can see the foundation of the synagogue where Jesus taught in Capernaum because it was destroyed and never rebuilt in fulfillment of these words of Jesus. It's
Yeah.
striking. Jesus' hometown.
Mm. And what's going to happen to them? No, you will go down to Hades. What a condemnation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how we respond to Jesus is vital. And that's why we need to take the message out there, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. The
not water it down.
consequences are, sorry?
And not water it down.
No, 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 no. The consequences of rejecting Jesus are immense.
Mm.
Um, but hey ho, yes.
I find the passage ends in a sort of interesting way, doesn't it?
Yeah, where do you put your joy? I think that's lovely, isn't it? You know, your joy is in the fact that you've been saved. That's what really matters. Your relationship with the Lord Jesus, not whatever signs and wonders or how many people are converted by your ministry. It's it's the people that you have been saved. That's wonderful, isn't it? And do you know in the Psalm, in verses 1 to 3, David, with his deliverance, praises God for his deliverance. But then what he does is, verse 4, he urges the rest of the community to join in praising God for their salvation, their corporate salvation. That's where we rejoice in, is our salvation. Anyway, there you go. Carry on.
I think they needed the reminder because you can imagine, can't you? Verse 17, I can almost picture the scene in my head, can't you? The 70 or 72 return with joy, saying,
Yeah,
Lord, in your name, even the demons submit to us. Can you imagine they've done this wonderful ministry? They've prayed and they've seen the power of God come down. as they've prayed and people's
Hmm.
lives changed. You can imagine they were like full of it, so excited that they could do all of this stuff. And Jesus is basically saying, yeah, I've given you all this authority. I've given you authority over the devil. That's what the treading on snakes and stuff is about, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's authority over the over Satan and his minions, and you are safe from that because you're mine. But but don't be
Hmm.
excited by that. Don't rejoice in that. Rejoice
Yeah.
that your name is written in heaven.
And how easy it is in our own ministries to follow the same sort of line. We rejoice over what, in a way, are trivialities, or we rejoice over, oh, I've been asked to take part in such and such a ministry or to do this by the bishop or whatever. Well,
Or
yeah, so
even,
what?
or even we put on this special service and the church was full and people said how lovely it was. And you go home and you're like, thank you, Lord. And it's like exciting. You're really pleased. You feel like God's been
Yeah,
working through you. But Jesus says, actually, don't be excited about that. Be glad you're saved. That's the
yeah,
important thing.
yeah. That's right.
So
That's right.
even, so the flip side is, even if the demons are not spitting to us, in the sense that we're not seeing dramatic ministry. Doesn't matter if your ministry is dramatic or not. Be faithful, trust in
Yeah,
God, and rejoice that your name's written in heaven.
yeah. That's what matters, and that should give you as a minister some sort of assurance as well. That's what matters. That you're
Mm,
saved, that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. That's what we praise God about first and foremost.
yeah.
Yeah,
Even if you lose everything, even if everything falls apart,
yeah,
that is not changeable, is it?
yeah. You're going to get that comfortable falling asleep, Melanie, that you've longed for. You're going to wake up in heaven
Yeah, yeah. One day.
one day. Well, I hope you enjoyed preaching on it.
Actually, I probably won't be preaching on that. I shall be on my holidays.
Oh, where are you going?
We are going to Orkney.
Orkney. Oh, very nice too.
Road trip with the hubby.
Lovely for you. How lovely. Remember to take your mosquito repellent.
Well, I've got special bands as well
Oh, right, okay.
because I get bitten easily.
Righty ho. Okay. I hope you don't get bitten or
But you enjoy
sunburst.
preaching on it.
I think I am somewhere.
Good. Make sure
Yes.
you include those extra verses.
Oh, I will. I will. Have a good holiday,
Ta-ra.
Melanie.
Thank you.
Bring me
Bye
a
bye.
stick of rock back.
I don't know if they have rock up there. Do they have rock up there?
I don't know, but you might get Edinburgh rock. Easier to get up there than it is down here.
We don't go in near Edinburgh though.
But you can still get it. But I have to warn you, I got some Edinburgh rock in Glasgow and it wasn't that good.
That's because it was from Glasgow.
Well, maybe. Hey ho, ta-da.
Ta-ra.
Bye.